Good morning, everybody. How are you doing? Today is the third day of July 2024. It is exactly 9:02 in the morning, a nice Wednesday morning down here in Tampa, Florida. Don't forget, tomorrow at 5 p.m., yes, July the 4th, we are going to be doing a Twitter Spaces chat. You can find it on mine, and you can find it on a number of people, Doodle Bob's and on BB's. I'm sure they'll be linking to them as well. Their Twitter feeds thing, X, Twitter, whatever the hell you call it. 5 p.m., probably to 5 p.m. till 6 p.m. We're going to be talking about all kinds of stuff. There's a engineer who is debating me via emails, wants to have a chat. That might be tomorrow. It might be Saturday or Sunday via Twitter Spaces. He thinks that there's a 99% chance that the Twin Towers came down exactly as NIST said, and 95% chance that Building 7 came down exactly as NIST said. So that should be an interesting chat. It might happen tomorrow. It probably will happen where it's just going to be a kind of one-on-one thing with him. But that will be also recorded and published on my BitChute and YouTube page and my website. Lots to talk about today. Quick note, production note. I might get a phone call, and if I do, I have to pause the video and go hook up electricity because they turned off his temp pole across the street because he thought he was going to have full service from Tico. The full service never came, and yet they came and turned off his temp pole anyway. So now he's got a crew over there, and he might need to run electricity from here to there. So if I get a phone call and I pause the recording for a minute, that's what I'm doing. Let's talk. Where to start with? We'll going to end with Lawrence Wilkerson, Colonel Lawrence Wilkerson. Not a huge fan. He was Secretary of State Colin Powell's chief advisor and staff member, chief of staff, during the whole build up to the Iraq War kind of thing. Again, not a fan. However, he's going to tell us some hard, honest facts about what's going on in Gaza. This is about maybe a 4-month-old talk he gave. Clearly, it was already happening, and the shit was already going on. Some stuff has come to light since what he had to say, but you might think to yourself, it sounds vaguely familiar to what Scott's been talking about for quite some time. So, and it's interesting to hear somebody who knows what they're talking about giving you an honest breakdown of what's happening. So that's going to be the last part of this and the majority of this video. It's only an 8-minute video of his, but we're going to stop and start and kind of do a little react-act segment of the video. Before we get there, let's talk about the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court has recently made several rulings. I talked about this before in my previous video talking about the private equity's war on you. We talked about some of the recent rulings that the Supreme Court issued before they scurried off for their vacation or whatever at the end of this session. And scurry they did. The last one being giving immunity to the president as long as what he's doing is considered official task for the good of the government and the state. There's a reason they withheld this ruling until the very last, and they dropped it and ran off. This is causing all kinds of issues, all kinds of problems, constitutional problems, to say the least, just to start with. This is bad. This is really, really bad. A string of these rulings they dumped and ran all tend to lead in one direction, and that one direction is just pure straight up fascism. The Chevron ruling, the one with the, what is that fucking company? Hang on a second. I'll show you. What is that fucking company? Blogger. Researching private equity firms. The company was KKR and Company with Henry Kravis at the head. It's KKR. KKR was the one, the ruling that they got, the Supreme Court said that basically, yeah, there's no reason why KKR, private equity firm, can't just buy $10 billion worth of fucking, it's 5,100 fucking units in a big block and take control of it. Everything, all these rulings are in favor of big business. And so too is the one supposedly about Donald Trump, but it's actually giving the power of the unitary executive to the President of the United States. And you say, Scott, what is that word? What is that term? The power of the unitary executive. What is that? Well, we'll talk about that. By the way, I just want you guys to remember, everyone's talking about Jill Biden now. Everyone's talking about Jill Biden. All these Johnny-come-latelys jumping on the bandwagon about Jill Biden. I said this the day after the video. I talked about Jill Biden the day after the fucking speech, or debate, or whatever it is. Let's take a look at this real quick. Look, that's the Lawrence Wilkerson thing. Dick Cheney's unitary executive theory. If you guys remember, if you're old enough, it was fucking 21 years ago, 22 years ago, whatever it was. It was right after 9/11, and Dick Cheney was talking about we need to walk on the dark side for a little while. Of course, all kinds of shit was happening. The Patriot Act was happening. The terrorism, the anti-terrorism bill in the United Kingdom was happening. Which, by the way, the anti-terrorism bill in the United Kingdom has only been used on journalists. That's it. The whole fucking the Department of Homeland Security and all the additional screening you have to go through and all the money they made from those fucking X-ray machines that look at your genitalia. Some fucking high school dropout dude sitting there with his TSA job, staring at a fucking screen all day long, looking at your genitalia, laughing, looking at your children's genitalia, laughing, or touching himself. Listen, there have been more criminals, I think by 1,000%, more criminals arrested from the TSA than there have been people arrested trying to get on planes with box cutters or diapers of doom or bombs. There's been no terrorism attempt stopped via the TSA. And yet, here we are, 20-some years later, billions and billions of dollars have been funneled into it. And this big fucking, basically, slush bucket of cash that people just reach in and dip out for their NGOs or their not-for-profits or whatever, or for their husband's fucking business or their wife's fucking business or their step fucking son's fucking business. It's just a big grab bag. It's just a big slush fund. That's all it is. It's a trough. And it's a fraud. It was an opportunity to cash in. So at that time, when all that shit was happening, and again, like I said before, the only ones who have been, detained and had their shit snatched from them, they aren't terrorists in the United Kingdom with their anti-terrorism bill. It was all journalists. All journalists. We want to know who you're talking to. We want to know where your money's coming from. We want to know if you got any fucking whistleblowers about to tell us some secret that we don't want the public to know. So they use that against fucking journalists, which tells you what they think about real journalism. And anyway, back around that time, when we had the fucking, everyone was talking about, the radical Islam By the way, that shit just came back too. There's this guy in New York, and there's an article down on my website about that, who's now saying, don't listen to radical Islam. I guess because I have this up here, that makes me radical Islam. That kind of fucking wording is coming back too. Those kind of fucking attacks and smears are coming back too. The crazier and the more fucking genocidal the Israelis become, the more you'll see stuff like that. People screeching about radical Islam and the terrorists, and you stand with us or you stand with the terrorists. By the way, stream of consciousness, I guess. Let me just show you something else real quick. Just so you understand how this works. I wanted to do this because I wanted people to see that, everyone thinks, oh my God, it's the Jews this, it's the Jews that. There's 4 of the top 10 private equity firms are run by Jewish people. 4 of the top 10. It's not a Jewish thing. They happen to be there in some capacity, but it's not a Jewish thing. It is a money thing. It is a mammon thing, okay? But I did want to show you this. Look at the bottom there. Neuberger Berman Group, LLC. Who's that run by? A guy by the name of George Herbert Walker IV. You say, well, Scott, that sounds familiar. Yes, George Herbert Walker Bush. This is from the Walker family. George Herbert Walker IV is from the Walker family, related to George Herbert Walker Bush. W from George W. Bush stands for Walker. This is how we don't understand the power of the Bush family and how ingrained they are with the money and the financing. You go all the way back to Prescott Bush. These people are super fucking wealthy. They are well ingrained. Now you say, well, Scott, you're picking on the right. What about the left? Look right above it. That's Timothy Geithner. Timothy Geithner was Barack Obama's. What's the word I'm looking for? The head of the fucking Fed. He was well established in the Obama administration, and he was one who was with Obama when they pushed for, before the election or after the election, right before the election, pushed for passage of the TARP bailout bill, and then oversaw, that fucking slush fund of money going to the banks, the very same banks and financial institutions and private equity firms that caused the subprime mortgage crisis in the first place. So the Obama administration, the left, the Bush administration, the fucking right, they are well represented. These are the top 10 private equity firms in the country, and I believe in the world, but at least certainly in the country, in 2024. That's them. And these are the ones who are buying up everything they can so that the American people can't start to, when they join the middle class, they get out of college, they work hard, they don't go to college, they learn a trade, they join a union, they start getting real money, decent money, they start making decent money, they can't afford to buy a house and get a certain percentage of that fucking money back through paying down the fucking mortgage on the loan for the house. They can't build wealth in that fashion. Instead, these motherfuckers are doing it. And the Supreme Court says, hey, that's fine and dandy, let them do it. You want to know why certain fucking people, Geithner is associated and best buddies with the Obamas. I used to talk about him all the fucking time. Well, who are the Obamas? Who are the ones who were really pushing to keep fucking aside from his family, outside of his family, who are the ones who are really pushing to keep fucking Joe Biden in place? Joe Biden's former president, a guy by the name of Barack Obama. That's the power structure. Cenk Uygur, I hate to keep fucking shitting on Cenk Uygur, but it's so goddamn easy. Cenk Uygur did this whole fucking thing where he's like figured out some shit. He's like, oh my God, it is Joe Biden. Oh my God, it is fucking the crackhead hunter. They figured that out 3 or 4 days after I did. And they were like, oh my God, this is the thing. And then he goes like this, and he goes, well, you know, all these alt-right people think it's like the deep state telling them to keep him in place. That's bullshit. It's just fucking Joe Biden and Crackhead Hunter. Joe Biden and Crackhead Hunter have zero pull with people like that. However, Barack Obama made a statement in support of keeping fucking Joe Biden in office. Barack Obama doesn't give a shit about Joe Biden's legacy. If he literally, they will push him out there in front of the public until he literally shits on himself, and they have to edit it out live on the air because he shits on himself. They'll keep him out there until he does that. They don't care, and they'll spin it afterwards. They are. I got sidetracked, but they are planning on doing a convention online before the convention so that it will lock fucking Biden in place as the fucking nominee no matter what. And there can't be a contested convention at the convention, which is a thing that could possibly happen. I mean, that's remarkable. In order to keep that man in fucking place, knowing full well the people, the Dems don't want him. I mean, that's first of all, it's elder abuse. Second of all, it's insane because, well, not really. People think it's insane because, oh my God, I mean, look at all the polling. Biden's losing in all of these fucking blue states, not swing states, turning fucking traditional blue states into swing states. Forget the fucking blue wall. That's gone. He's losing in all of the fucking, in a lot of these things. People, and the more he talks, he did a fucking thing for 4 minutes talking about some shit. He didn't take any questions. He came in, read off a teleprompter, got some shit wrong still, and then whoop, off he went. People are like, oh, he was great because he didn't throw up in his mouth, because he didn't drift off and start talking about fucking lollipops and bunny rabbits, because he didn't shit on himself that we could hear. So he did great. Is it Mersheimer? One of these fucking guys came out. One of these fucking guys. One of the Watergate guys came out. Ancient. They rolled his ass out, and he gave something with on CNN. Anderson Cooper. We were talking to Anderson Cooper, and he was saying that, you know, oh my God, this is terrible. He said, we've got a bunch of people. He spoke to a bunch of insiders, and they said there have been 16 to 20 incidents over the last year and a half where he's acted like this, and oh my God. And they're deliberately trying to conceal it. And of course, you know, Cenk Uygur and Ana Kasparian go off on that. 16 to 20 over a year. What the hell are the odds of him doing this? You don't understand. They still don't get it. People just don't fucking understand. If they're keeping him away in his worst states from the public, they're also keeping him away in his worst states from his insiders, from people on the inside. So that 16 to 20 events would probably, if you include the ones that they keep him locked away when no one can see him, go from 16 to 20 to 160 to 200. He has not, and the ones where we can actually speak, that's the wonders of modern pharmaceuticals. That's literally crystal meth. That's what fucking Adderall is. It's pharmaceutical meth. He's literally on fucking meth whenever he's presentable. That's the president of the United States. And that's the one they want to keep in power. Why? Because he's not going to get in the way. He's going to read the fucking teleprompter. Everyone knows now that he's debilitated. So they're not going to, why haven't we seen the president in 6 months? Because he's playing, this little piggy went to market with his fucking caregiver in the East fucking wing. That's why. And Jill's out there doing shit, and his staff is out there doing shit, and the fucking State Department's out there doing shit, Blinken's out there doing shit, Timothy Geithner's out there doing shit, Barack Obama's out there doing shit. The president is just fucking there. Remember the fucking when it became clear that there was a machine that would sign for the president. And then of course we had the robo signing and all the fucking. No one cared about the fucking machine signing for the president, so the banks took it up for the fucking mortgage for stealing people's mortgages and the foreclosures. So they started doing the robo signing thing too. No one gave a shit. People, it was a big thing. No one gave a shit. No, when I say no one gave a shit, I mean the people gave a shit. The people in charge, no one went to jail for that shit. None of these things were fucking negated. It was robo-signed, so what? Off you go, get the fuck out. That house now belongs to Citigroup, J.P. Morgan, BlackRock, State Street, Vanguard. So, here's the thing. Everyone goes, well, the public, he's going to lose. He's going to lose these swing states. Who says? Well, the polling says, Scott. And what's the polling got to do with electronic voting machines? They don't care. That's the problem. That's the fucking problem. All of these people, who, like Cenk Uygur and fucking Anna Kasparian, all of these people who tell you that they're concerned about our democracy. We got to save democracy. And oh my God, they're going to bring in Biden and Biden's going to lose. That might be the plan. Big business and big fucking billionaires like Donald Trump, Zionists love Donald Trump because he'll bomb fucking Palestinian kids himself while he's eating beautiful cake. He'll have his generals do it. He doesn't give a shit. They like Donald Trump. And he's not coming after them. Who's to say Jill Stein and fucking and Hunter Biden aren't on the fucking payroll for some big ass fucking PAC that supports Donald Trump? Who the fuck? From AIPAC, from AIPAC's PAC, from fucking Adelson family in Israel. Who's to say? Who's to say? There's running. Don't use the electronic voting machines. Let Trump have it. They don't give a shit if he goes after Hillary Clinton and the fucking FBI for what they've done, the corrupt shit they've done. They could care less. There's a lot of shit that happens behind the scenes. This is some Shakespearean fucking shit, man. This is Shakespearean royalty shit. What? So, I mean, this is Lear. Somebody made a fucking thing calling her Lady Mick Biden. I thought that was great. This is some deep state shit. But he comes out saying there's no such thing as a deep state. Of course there's a deep state. Of course they're the ones who make the decisions. And now, because of this thing with Trump and this ruling that the Supreme Court signed off on and threw out the fucking window of the limousines as they drove down the road, laughing. Yeah, your country's fucked. Goodbye. Zoom. We're Supreme Court justices. We don't give a shit. We're above all this. Zoom. Giving immunity to any fucking president from now on, in perpetuity, for whatever they do for the state. If it's a personal thing, if they personally ass raped a puppy, they can be held accountable for that. I'll give you an example of how that can be used. Dick Cheney and acting as the unitary executive himself, and under the guise of fucking, under the cover of fucking George Walker Bush, they couldn't be held accountable for 9/11. If it came, if it came out, that it should easily come out, that they did it, that's an official fucking act. They did that on behalf of the government, through the fucking government, for the benefit of the country, because, according to them, their idea was they had to rebuild America's defenses. The project for the new American century, not the project for the new Cheney century or the new Bush century, the new American century. So technically, according to this law, or this ruling, I shouldn't say law, according to this ruling from the Supreme Court, we couldn't hold Dick Cheney and George W. Bush accountable if we saw pictures of them with an Acme fucking plunger in New York. Can't do it. Can't do it. Because it was for the government, through the government. That is fucking remarkable. Can't hold them accountable for, I don't know, war of aggression against fucking Iraqi people. It's killed 1 million people. Can't hold him accountable, can't hold Biden accountable for what is clearly violation of international law and U.S. law. It is United States law that we have to abide by, international law. Can't hold him accountable for supplying fucking 2,000-pound bombs to drop on children in tents in a refugee camp in Rafah. Can't. Could before, won't, but can't. Could before with 9/11 and the Bushes, can't. Can't hold Barack Obama accountable for killing U.S. citizens and putting them on kill lists and killing U.S. citizens, including a 16-year-old boy and his friend in Yemen. Can't. Can't hold him accountable when it turns out that, yeah, that wasn't fucking Osama bin Laden. The whole thing was a fucking sham. The whole thing was a fucking lie. The whole thing was done as a PR thing before his election. Because it was for the government. It was for the betterment of the United States and the people of the United States. Can't hold him accountable. This is the unitary executive theory. And the unitary executive theory, promoted by Dick Cheney, written by others, but promoted by Dick Cheney. The legality of ultimate power. Vice President Dick Cheney's ascent to power under George W. Bush appeared to grant him the powers and privileges of the presidency. The supposition was depicted in 2018's feature film Vice. The film presents a multitude of real-life events, political jargon, and legal terminology. One example of them was repeated use of the term unitary executive theory. His little fucking attorney general was pushing that, forget his fucking name, criminal dude. God, I forget his name. Fuck, I'm getting old. This is George Washington University. This is not InfoWars. This is real. And his theory was thus: there must be one person, one decider. Remember when George W. Bush said, "I am the decider"? He was promoting Dick Cheney's idea and the neocon idea of the unitary executive theory, which is there's one person in charge. The one person can't be questioned. During a time of war, if you question what the president's doing, then you shut the fuck up. That was Bill O'Reilly. Okay? Back in the day. If you're old enough to remember that shit. Dixie Chicks had some questions. Fuck the Dixie Chicks. They got fucking canceled. Cancel culture existed long before 2018, 2017, 2016. Cancel culture existed long before that. How dare you question us at a time of 9/11, 9/11, 9/11, 9/11, said Giuliani whenever he ran for office. People are shocked that Giuliani is in trouble now. Oh my God, Giuliani did this, Giuliani did that. Oh my God. Giuliani was filmed walking away from the emergency center, going someplace else. The Twin Towers were still standing. The emergency center was this big-ass thing built in this buff-ass bunker in Building 7. The Twin Towers were still standing. There was shit all over the place. And somebody recorded him and the rest of the fucking emergency people who were supposed to handle all the emergencies in New York City from this bunker. And they were walking away from it on 9/11. Why is that? What did they know about office fires bringing down steel and concrete buildings before they came down? What did they know about what did they know about thermal expansion, which brought down Building 7 neatly into its own footprint in a picture-perfect controlled demolition, pulling the sides down on top of it and not damaging the two buildings sitting beside it? What did he know about that? What did Rudy Giuliani know about 9/11? And he gets brought down because some Trump shit? Man. The Unitary Executive Theory. Dick Cheney's Unitary Executive Theory was thus. You have one guy in charge, one guy makes the fucking decisions, the president, which at that time was him. He was in the bunker, in the White House bunker for 9/11. You should look up what Norman Panetta said to the 9/11 investigation, the 9/11 Commission, when they interviewed him. Norman Panetta. Look up what he said about, it's 50 miles out, Mr. Vice President. Do the orders still stand? Yes. It's 40 miles out, Mr. President. Do the orders still stand? Yes. Mr. President, it's 5 miles out. Do the orders still stand? Have I said anything to contradict those orders? And then that blip hit the Pentagon. That's Dick Cheney. That's the Unitary Executive Theory author. And that fucking happened. And it was testimony from Norman Panetta, Secretary of Transportation at the time, who was in the fucking bunker when it took place. Meanwhile, George W. Bush was reading a fucking storybook to fucking kids in a kindergarten. Do you know where they went? The Bush team, once they realized it was going on, and they contacted the White House, and Dick Cheney told them to stay away because he was in charge. And he didn't want anyone to fucking overrule anything he had to do, any decisions he had to make. So they told him to stay away. Do you know where they went? The Bush team. Once they figured out what was happening, they went to the one place on the planet where he could land and then get into a bunker and overrule from that location any kind of launch orders with nuclear weapons. That's where he went. Because I theorized that they figured, you can look it up, it's true. They figured that once they figured out what was going on, once they figured out all these fucking drills of our Air Force planes that would usually be used to patrol the skies in the northeastern corridor were all sent to Canada. Once they realized that this was a new Pearl Harbor type event that he had written about, Dick Cheney and the neocons from the Project for the New American Century, exactly 364 days before 9/11, once they realized what was going on, they also understood if this shit goes tits up, there's a strong chance somebody might fucking launch in order to cover up the evidence of what they had done. Because the whole thing would go fucking belly up. And they would start snitching on each other, and they would start talking about the whole plan and who was involved in it. It'd be like the fucking business plot of 1934. Had it succeeded all the way up to taking the fucking White House. And then been foiled at the last minute, they'd be snitching on each other and cutting deals and all this nasty shit. Or they push a button. They'd set the launch codes in place. Because in the aftermath of whatever's fucking left, it really wouldn't matter. So they went, the Bush team went, to the one place in the entire planet, on the entire planet, where they could stop the fucking launch. Or they could override it as President of the United States. Facts. These are all facts. Unitary executive theory is what we are looking at now. And they have been, this article that I point out from the New York Times shows how they've been slowly working through incrementalism to get to this unitary executive theory. And the unitary executive theory is quite simply tin pot dictatorship, where you have one person who's a dictator who's running the whole fucking show. And now, thanks to the Supreme Court, that one tin pot dictator is free of any kind of concern for being arrested and prosecuted and tried for whatever fucking horrible shit they do to people outside the country and people inside the country. Like, say, issuing mandates for the new fucking mRNA fucking jabs for H5N1. In spite of the fact that, it's unconstitutional. Fuck unconstitutional. I'm the unitary executive now, and that's what the country needs. Take your fucking jabs, which do nothing. I mean, that's why that's tremendously important. The unitary executive theory. There's a link to this article here. There's plenty of stuff on it. You can look it up. This article here from the New York Times is good because it talks about how this immunity has been rising. Not only just the immunity, but the power of the president has been. There's no mention of the unitary executive, I don't think, in this. I don't remember if there was. I don't think there was. Here's the article where the guy's talking about the dirty Muslims and the radical Muslim occupation. It's a U.S.-based rights advocacy group condemned the anti-Muslim comments made by the new Council General of New York. This is a good one. An Israeli minister threatens against recognizing Palestine, says for every country that recognizes Palestine, we're going to start a new fucking settlement up in the West Bank. How dare you talk about that? And lastly, we'll talk about this before we go to the Lawrence Wilkerson thing. Ben Giver. Ben Giver has confirmed the horrible shit that's being done to Palestinians in IDF custody. As opposed to when somebody comes out of Palestinian custody and they talk about how nicely they were treated and they look good and they're sitting there talking on their phones and they're doing their little things and everything's great, and some guy's sitting there with a fucking yarmulke on his head and said, "Oh my God, you're out of the hands of the animals," and she's just doing this. You recall when the first hostages were released, the elderly women were released, and they said goodbye. They turned and waved goodbye to the people in Palestinian scars on their face, kufiyas on their face, and they were waving back. They said nothing but nice things about them. And then they made that illegal. They They made that illegal. This is what happens. We always pick the wrong team. Mubarak, fucking Shaw, Pinochet, drunko fucking Yeltsin, Zelensky. We always pick the wrong fucking side. And we've picked the wrong side for decades, since 1967, when it comes to the conflict between Israel and Palestine. It's just a fact. I mean, yes, there are only four Jewish members of the top 10 fucking that run the top 10 fucking private equity firms in the United States. But notice there are no Palestinian names on that fucking list. There are no Arab names on that list. There are no Muslim names on that list. We always pick the wrong fucking side. Always. It was a lot of people actually ended up coming back out of Vietnam. I know a lot of you are too young to remember, and people coming out, and parents or grandparents for some of you guys talked about it briefly. I don't know how many times I heard people say, including my uncles when I was younger, who both served in Korea. But the general consensus among fucking the military that I know of, at least the ones that I read, was that, you know, we were fighting on the wrong side in Vietnam. We were fighting for the wrong fucking people in Vietnam. That's why people, you know, were shocked when they signed up and they heard all these horrible things about the Vietnam and the Viet Cong and all these things, and we're fighting for democracy, and they go over there and they see the hatred in the eyes of the people they're supposedly defending. That's because they weren't defending them. They were occupying them. And the government that we were supporting was a brutal fucking dictatorship. It's not a mystery. And most of them coming back, most of the military folks coming back, they understood. They came to understand that. We were on the wrong side in Vietnam. We've been on the wrong side of a lot of things for a very long time. And we are certainly on the wrong side when it comes to the Israel-Palestinian conflict. I'm not. You're not. The vast majority of the, not the vast majority, I think this whole thing has brought this to light for a lot of people, and they look back on, and they look at this, and they know this is bad, but then they say, wait a minute, it didn't happen in a vacuum. Why were 1.2 million people in the world's largest ghetto, the world's largest concentration camp? What the fuck was this all about? Where did this start? And they start doing their own research, and they realize, oh shit. This has been a one-sided thing since the fucking PLO days. This has been a one-sided thing for a very long time. And if you want to go back to 1948 and the Nakba, this is Trail of Tears shit. We've been on the wrong side of this for a very long time, and there's somebody who's going to say the same thing. And that guy is this dude, Colonel Lawrence Wilkerson. Now, Lawrence Wilkerson will mention the fact that Bibi Netanyahu has been doing this for 15 years. I don't know exactly when this video was taken, at some time since January of this year, because he refers to events that have happened since then, like, for instance, the bombing of the people who were at the aid trucks and the attack on the people at the aid trucks. So he's clearly talking during this event. A number of things in this 8-minute video point that out, prove that out, bear that out. But he forgets that Bibi, he says 15 years. Netanyahu's been doing this, which puts it at about 2009, 2008. Bullshit. There's video from 2000 of Bibi Netanyahu talking to a settler family where, and this is what gets me. For the longest time, people are like, on the alt left, had been conditioned to believe that Bibi was the one who was supporting the two-state solution, and we got to support a one-state solution. That's the most basic form of fucking propaganda. Reverse positions and get them to support because they oppose this dude. Get them to support the thing you want them to support in the first place. But fact is, there's video from Bibi Netanyahu in 2000 talking to a settler family in their fucking house that used to belong to Palestinians, reassuring them that once he's fucking prime minister and back in charge, that whole 1967 borders thing is out the fucking window. It is all ours from the river to the fucking sea. Which, of course, is the Likud party's it's in the Likud party doctrine. It's all fucking Israel. Including fucking Gaza, including the West Bank. It's all Israel, including fucking a good chunk of fucking Syria. Including, if you go with the Greater Israel Project, including parts of fucking Egypt and parts of fucking Jordan. It's all fucking Israel. So he's had this belief, and he's been of this fucking mindset for a very long time, since the beginning. And as Mr. Wilkerson will point out, and you'll see in a second, he's been working to that end for a long time, as have all Zionists. They do not support the two-state solution. They 100% support the one-state solution. It's all fucking Israel and fuck everybody else. I will start with this before I'll end with this before I go to the Lawrence Wilkerson thing, and that is this. Cenk Uygur, again, but I'm punching up, except for IQ, then I'm punching down. But Cenk Uygur and fucking Anna Kasparian were talking about. They couldn't understand the Nakba Pier. They don't call it that because they don't understand it, don't get it, or they do and they don't talk about it. But now they're dismantling the Nakba Pier, and they're saying that I don't understand it. Why would we do this? We only put like 400 truckloads in and some shit, and there were 500 going in every day. So there was so few fucking trucks of aid that went in. I don't get it. What don't they get? What don't they get? They were upset because let me go to my blog here and pull this up. It's all the way down. I gotta scroll and scroll and scroll. How many fucking years? Jesus. When did I start this one? 2018, when the other one got wiped out? 2018. Is that Lawrence Wilkerson? I do have Lawrence Wilkerson on here. That's cool. Where's the Nakba Pier? Here we go. That's June 14th. They don't get this. This is from Mondo Wise, I guess because they don't read Mondo Wise. They're saying in June 14th, 2004, that they're afraid the U.S. pier is going to be used to forcibly displace Palestinians, which is exactly 100% what I've been saying since they started opening the goddamn thing, since they started talking about the goddamn thing. This is the Netzarim Beach. This is the Netzarim Highway. That's Netzarim's fucking settlements back in the day in 2005. That was the last fucking settlement that was moved. That was going to be the first settlement they built back. And they still plan to build back. There is a Nakba Pier. That's the fucking NGO jetty. That's the fucking pier. Right there. At the end of the Nakba Highway. Which they've been building since 3 weeks into this thing in October, beginning of November last year. That's a video I made on May 30th. Here's me showing exactly the location of it. That's the fucking pier. That's the fucking jetty. That's the fucking location. Completely controlled. the Netzarim fucking corridor, or Route 749. That's the Nakba superhighway. Here's me talking about it May 18th. We can go all the way back if you like. Bibi Netanyahu told AIPAC at one time that he suggested the idea of the Gaza Aid Sea route to Biden. But it wasn't about aid, was it? There's a Nakba superhighway bisecting fucking Israel, and this is the location. That's the fucking jetty right down there, and the Nakba Pier is right here. That he never understood this. They didn't understand this. They said why would they do this? Why would they build this? Said Cenk Uygur and Anna Kasparian. Because all they had to do was convince their fucking ally Israel to open up and allow these goddamn thousands of truckloads of aid to come into the fucking country. Why would they need the fucking pier? The answer to the question I answered was simple. They can't displace the Palestinians through Israel. They can't just snatch them up and put them on cattle cars and go into fucking Israel. That's a bad look, and it's more than a fucking war crime. Egypt, al-Sisi, our puppet, has stated he's allowing fucking Israel to do this shit anyway. He's allowing Israel to fucking control the goddamn the entrance to Gaza from Egypt. There's no way that they should be allowed to do that, but he's allowing them to do that. He's our puppet, but he has stated openly he cannot survive politically. He cannot survive Israel's plan to put a fucking tent city in the Sinai and shove all the fucking Palestinians out through that fucking entrance into Gaza, into Israel, into Egypt, and store them in the fucking tent cities and fucking. He can't do it. The Muslim world would. He said the number one. Al-Sisi said this. The number one issue for the Muslim fucking countries in the world are the Palestinians, and he's not going to survive. Look what happened in Egypt. He said he's not going to survive if he facilitates the displacement of the Palestinians on behalf of glorious Israel to take fucking Gaza. He can't do it. So they had a problem. They can't go up north. They can't go to the fucking east. They can't go down south. What does that leave? The west. The water. That was the only way. And once they realized that they're not going to be able to get away with, at this particular juncture, forcing Palestinians onto the fucking buses on the Nakba superhighway and driving them up to the pier, well, they'll hop into the fucking hold of a cargo vessel and be taken to whatever fucking westernized country needs fucking cheap migrant labor, which is a big thing. They were already talking about this for months as the Nakba pier was being built and installed. They had even gotten some people on the alt-left to start saying, we need to fucking just start putting together money on these GoFundMe things so that we can relocate these Palestinians comfortably to the West. Forced relocation. They tricked the alt-left into pushing that bullshit. The only way for them to get them out was the Nakba Pier. And they are breaking apart the Nakba Pier. Why are they breaking apart the Nakba Pier? I'll explain. Now, I've already explained the point of the Nakba Pier to Cenk Uygur and Anna Kasparian, who apparently never understood it. Let me explain to you why they're tearing it down. Because there's no point in having it. They're not going to be able to get away with the forced relocation of these people right now. There's too much going on. Maybe in the future, maybe when we're during the election, maybe when the election crumbles, maybe when Trump comes to power, who knows? They've got the blueprint now, they got the materials now, they got the fucking pier, they're breaking it apart and they're taking it down. They're saying they're doing it because of weather. Yeah, when they sent the fucking reporter from NBC over there, MSNBC over there, and they were recording it from a boat. Water was calm. Pier was just sitting there. And the guy goes, "Oh yeah, but I could hear creaking." It's a floating goddamn metal pier. You're going to hear fucking creaking, you moron. But I could hear creaking. You're going to hear creaking, you idiot. It's a metal floating fucking pier. The water was calm. No problems. They could have been loading fucking aid in right then and there. But what they couldn't do is pull the Palestinians out. So what did they do? They broke it apart. Why? Because they didn't want to have the conversation when asked, "Hey, the pier's there. They need fucking aid. You're putting pressure on Israel. Why don't you just bring 100 fucking trucks in a day on the pier? That would be good." So in light of the fact that they couldn't use it for what they intended to use it for at this particular junction, rather than answer questions about why they're not bringing aid in, because they don't want to bring aid in, they broke it apart due to weather concerns. As if the engineers working for the fucking United States didn't understand what the weather conditions would be off the coast of Gaza when they designed it and brought it over there and built it for the cost of $230 million. You're not supposed to think about these things. But that's why we're proud. Proud. I know it's been a long time. Hang on. An hour? How long have I been talking to you? Fucking hour, Jesus. How do I know these things? I'm going to end with Lawrence Wilkerson. Somebody who actually knows what he's talking about. I know what I'm talking about. Let's talk about this. He's going to talk about something that Gordon Levy mentioned the other day in an interview with Benjamin Owen. Remember, this is about 3 or 4 months old. And that is the vast majority of Israelis support this fucking action taking place in Gaza. And I'm as shocked as Gordon Levy was. I thought this would be over in January, beginning of the year. I thought Bibi would be long gone by then. But apparently, the glorious Israelis, they don't mind blowing up 15,000 fucking children. They don't mind it. Apparently it makes their dicks hard. Makes them wet. He says 85% of the Jewish Israelis are on board with this. Is that him sending me a fucking text asking for electricity or not? No, that's them warning an update. Wait a minute. That's good. I'm sorry. I don't know what the fuck that means. All right, sorry. I'm distracted. My phone. Goddamn phones. Let's have a listen. If it plays.
Gaza, another matter altogether. We are paying for our fidelity to a people. 85% of the Israeli people who are Jewish are for this war.
We are backing the wrong people.
They don't necessarily like Netanyahu, but they are for what he's doing.
Yep.
We are lashed up to them in a way that is so debilitating, so against our national security interests, so against our humanitarian and reputational interests, that it makes your heart hurt to be in Washington and see it happening every day. It's unconscionable what I'm seeing happening in Washington. And every time somebody excoriates me or comes after me in some way for my appearances on television or whatever, I get a even more visceral view of these poisonous people who think, first, too many of them think Israel's doing the right thing. One said to me, a patent neoconservative, if they weren't killing them, we'd have to be there killing them. And I asked him, explain yourself. What the hell do you mean? They're all terrorists.
Even the 4-year-olds.
Those women and children
Ben Givers are the same
at the
thing.
foot of that hospital, that 2,000-pound bomb dropped on that you made and sent to them, they're terrorists? Well, they're supporting terrorists. They will. They'll grow up and be terrorists. It reminded me of what one person told me, a Serb who was...
They're supporting terrorists. What have I talked about? Over and over again, what have I talked about? I've talked about the Salvador option. Mothers, fathers, carpenters, bricklayers, teachers, doctors, nurses. All of these average people in Gaza, all of these average people in Vietnam, all of these average people in El Salvador, all of these average people in Afghanistan, all of these average people in Iraq, all of these average people in Syria. They support the terrorists. Who are the terrorists? The terrorists are the legitimate governments that we want to remove. The Salvador option dictates that those people can be treated in any way we need to. Because first of all, they're soft targets. And second of all, because their existence supports the governments that we want to regime change, or the insurgency that we want to put down. Ergo, they support terrorism. That's the fucking mindset. That's the mindset of the guy that we sent over there. What was his name? Glenn. Lieutenant Colonel Glenn, that we sent over there 4 weeks into this fucking thing, late October, early November of 2023, to help the Israelis, the IDF, come up with their plan, their strategy to deal with the fucking Hamas. He was an expert in the Salvador option. Punishing the people until the people say, we've had enough, we don't support our government anymore, we don't support the insurgency, for God's sake, stop killing our kids. That's what he's talking about. And he just casually says it, but he doesn't explain to you where that came from. That's where the mindset comes from.
A sniper in Sarajevo, and he just shot a 13-year-old boy on the street. And he was asked by a UN peacekeeping force officer why he did that. And he said, because he'll grow up to be a terrorist. Well, that's what these people think. That's what these people think, and that's what Netanyahu thinks. And let me tell you another thing about Netanyahu and what he's been doing since he was finance minister. Netanyahu, first of all, running for office, created the turmoil and the anger that got Yitzhak Rabin assassinated.
Yep,
and then
that's true.
The settler who assassinated him, he resurrected him and made him a hero. This is Bibi Netanyahu. This isn't something new, what he's doing. He's been doing this for over 15 years, personally orchestrating it. Now, he's in and out of the political realm in different niches because he has to keep getting elected, otherwise he'd go to jail. But he's been doing this, what has now come to fruition in Gaza, for longer than 15 years. Slowly but surely, he's been exterminating the Palestinians in the West Bank. If you've been there, you know that it now has roads running through it. Some of them look like autobahns. And they're all to connect Israeli settlements and to screen out Palestinians.
Yep.
Ben-Gvir has brought a new vengeance to this. Ben-Gvir, his director of security, is handing out weapons now. AR-15 type weapons now for the settlers. Because what is their intent now that they've almost finished the West Bank and they've started on and will finish East Jerusalem fairly swiftly? Their intent is to go into Gaza and to do it in Gaza. You may have seen the protests that occurred around the food, I wouldn't call them protests, the turmoil that occurred around the food trucks not too long ago, about a week ago or so, and they killed a couple of hundred people. Well, part of that was because they got the settlers in there too. The settlers are getting ready to do the things they did in the West Bank and in East Jerusalem, but now in Gaza. Rafah, and what he's going to do there is probably
it's the Rafah crossing that I was trying to think about when I was talking about Egypt and Al-Sisi and the crossing at Rafah that's controlled by the IDF, that they wanted at first to shove all the Palestinians out into Egypt and down to the Sinai Peninsula and Sinai, the desert, put them in tents until enough Western businesses needed cheap fucking labor, could just use them as a slave auction, kind of. But it was Rafah crossing I was trying to think of.
Final act in terms of extermination, just outright extermination, and evacuation. He's going to have some left. So my query the other day of one of the guys who's
listen very carefully to what he's going to say.
Been talking about this with me, is he's on the ground in Gaza. What do you think is going to happen to the ones that are left alive? Well, they're going to go somewhere, and it isn't going to be staying in Gaza. Well, Egypt has said they won't take them. Jordan has said they won't take them. You can't push any more into other places. You can't push them into the Sinai. What is going to happen?
What is going to happen? What's going to happen with all those? I was talking about this at the time he was doing this thing, or sometime right afterwards when the fucking Pier was announced. It was announced in this State of the Union address in passing, but they've been building it since November. So they knew. That's the answer. The answer to his question is the Nakba Pier. The answer to his question is the fucking aid pier that was supposed to bring in aid, didn't bring in much aid. And we don't know how much of that aid they got because it's right there at the end of the Nakba superhighway. Did they put the aid on the trucks and bring the trucks in and drive them right through fucking Gaza and right through Israel and right into the fucking West Bank to give them to the fucking settlers? That'd be my guess. That would be my guess. Because once they hit the fucking pier, it was the IDF who was in charge of them. But to answer his query, go back and look at all my stuff on the Nakba Pier. That's the answer to his question.
Well, he'll cross that bridge when he comes to it. I said, man, I've heard that before. Where'd you hear that before? When Will Taft, Powell's lawyer, asked Rumsfeld, Will said essentially, you got a 13-year-old down there in Guantanamo. A 13-year-old. Let's say he lives to be 80. Are you prepared to see him stay there for almost another 70 years? And Rumsfeld looked at him and said, we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. Well, Rumsfeld's dead. We've crossed that bridge and we still have people in Guantanamo. Bibi wants to get through this, stay out of jail, and turn it over to the next guy who will do the same damn thing because they've been doing it since 1967.
He keeps mentioning 1967. He keeps mentioning 1967, as I do, the importance of the June 1967 Accord. Which, by the way, the vast majority of the nations of the United Nations, 190 of them, 150 of them now recognize Palestine as a state, based on the June 1967 Accords and the Green Line borders between Israel and Palestine. The thing that Bibi Netanyahu said in 2000 he would never see recognized. And he would do everything in his power appeasing this fucking crazy settler family that he was 100% in taking everything from the river to the sea. It's a good fucking chat with Lawrence Wilkerson. I watch the whole thing. I strongly recommend you go take a look at it. A lot of the stuff that I've talked about, he mentions much of it over the course of all of this. Let me do this. You guys don't know why I use 2 fucking ring lights. It's Stanley McCandless lighting. I saw one, I think I've seen one. He's a game fucking, I think, blogger doing this. The same thing that I've done with 2 ring lights instead of 1. And the overhead. Overhead should be, well, anyway. That's what I got for you today. A lot. It's an hour and a half video. I'm sorry, but I didn't make one yesterday, so I had to. I was jonesing since I get so high off hearing my own voice. I had to talk for an hour and a half, and again, there's no Gabby. No Gabby. Y'all are going to think I killed her. He finally got sick of that cat peeing on shit. He killed her. I know he killed her. Tomorrow, for the 3 of you who might still be here, tomorrow, 5 p.m. on the 4th, we'll be doing a Twitter scene. Is that what it's called? I don't fucking know. Come to Twitter if you're on Twitter. You can participate. You can ask and be approved to contribute and have something to say, and I'd like to hear from you. We did this last week. Out of the blue, it just kind of happened, and a bunch of people showed up, and I had a good time. It's nice hearing from you guys. It really is. I read comments now, but there's so many comments that are left, obviously, by trolls and people who are just leaving wild shit. Plus, I want you to understand something. I can't comment. I don't know why this is. On Blogger, I try to comment, but when I go to try to comment, I can't comment from being logged in on the comments page. I can't reply from there like I used to be able on the WordPress thing. But I go to the front page, but when I go to the front page, it logs me out, and I can't even fucking comment. Even as an anonymous commenter, I can't even comment on my own fucking website. It says log in, so I log in, but immediately it goes to my fucking, the behind the scenes fucking page. But then when I go back to the fucking thing, it logs me out. So I have no idea what the fuck is going on with that. So you think I'm not commenting and I'm being standoffish. I'm not. There's no way for me at this point that I know of for me to comment on my own goddamn Blogspot fucking website. I got to look into that and see what I'm doing wrong. There's got to be a fucking way to do it. If anyone knows, please let me know. But so I don't have any interaction. So I'm just still kind of out here. I'm reading your comments, and they're good ones, but there's no interaction. And that's so this Twitter space thing tomorrow, 5 p.m. Is a chance for me to hear from you guys and talk to you guys and interact back and forth. And I miss that. I do. I miss that. I don't comment on the BitChute thing because everyone's talking about the Jews all the time. So I kind of let that go. YouTube, I will interact, but the comments are few and far between there. So the Twitter space thing, I think that's what it's called. You know what I'm talking about. The live chat interaction. It's a good chance if you want to talk to me, if you want to ask questions, or if you want to tell me I'm full of shit. If you want to tell me that, the Twin Towers did in fact fall because of office fires, and friction did in fact create hundreds of thousands of tons of metallic little microspheres. If you want to do that, you're welcome to as well. But there you have it. That's today, the July 3rd version of today's news. Lots of stuff going on. I hope you got something out of this. I know I did. And the Lawrence Wilkerson thing is interesting. Look up Dick Cheney and Unitary Executive, because that's where we're going. And if it doesn't bother you that we don't know, here's part of the thing. Here's part of the thing with the whole Joe Biden thing. If it ain't Joe Biden and his supposed fucking what people want to vote for, people vote for a leader because of what the leader says, what the leader stands for. We know for a fact it's not going to be that dude making decisions. We know for a fact it's not going to be that dude with getting the phone call, as Hillary used to say, at 2 o'clock in the fucking morning. We know for a fact. So the question is, who's going to be in charge? And that's the whole point of a goddamn representative democracy, a representative republic. You're supposed to be able to decide who it is that is in charge. And at this particular point, and all these people pushing for and trying to rewrite the history of that debate and all the bullshit, who's going to be in charge? Because it damn sure isn't going to be Biden. Who's going to be in charge? And now that the Supreme Court has given carte blanche to whatever puppet is in place at the time in terms of no prosecution, what the fuck are they going to try to get away with in his name? In the name of weekend at Biden's. What are they going to try to get away with? What are they going to robo-sign him on, his name to? What is Jill and crackhead Hunter, what are they going to let their father be fucking framed for, or the patsy for? That's deeply troubling. Deeply fucking troubling. And it's the same thing with Donald Trump. Donald Trump proudly stated that he gave full authority to his generals, his glorious generals, because he gets a hard-on for somebody in a goddamn uniform. While he's sitting around eating beautiful cake with the leader of fucking China at his fucking resort, his glorious generals made the determination they're going to kill a fucking leader, a beloved leader in fucking Iran. That's what he was doing his first time around. What the fuck is he going to do his second time around? Giving carte blanche to Israel to take as much fucking Palestine as they want. Putting the U.S. fucking embassy in Israel in a Palestinian house in East Jerusalem. What the fuck is he going to give to Bibi Netanyahu and Ben Gibber and Shmochich, whatever his fucking name is? What is he going to do for the fucking super Zionists, the ultimate Zionists? The Adelson family. Because they gave him $200 million for his first fucking campaign. God knows how much they're giving him now. What's he going to do for them? Especially now that the sky's the limit. The Supreme Court has issued their ruling. Presidents can do whatever the fuck they want. That's problematic. Anyway, I gotta go. I'll post this. Hope it posts. I know it's long. Those of you who are still here, thank you very much, and I appreciate it. And I will talk to you tomorrow. Bye-bye.